Breaking news. Great news for voters in North Carolina as a federal court enters a permanent injunction against a voter suppression law. Welcome back to Democracy Docket. I'm Marc Elias.
And I'm Paige Moskowitz. Let's get started.
You know, Paige, we have to celebrate the wins. We have to celebrate the wins. We have to celebrate the wins. I mean, there is so much going on right now that is causing people to be upset, is causing people anxiety, that when we get a decision like this, when we get an order like this issued from a federal court in North Carolina, putting on ice permanently a 2023 voter suppression bill, we just have to take a victory lap. So here we are. Let's lap.
Marc, this is really big news, not just for North Carolina voters, but for anyone who cares about voting rights and democracy in general. This concerns the undeliverable mail provision of North Carolina's voter suppression law, SB 747. And what it said is that a North Carolina voter who registered to vote and cast a ballot at the same time during the early voter registration period, their ballot would be temporarily separated until the Board of Elections sent out a test piece of mail to the address they provided on their voter registration application. However, if the USPS returned it as undeliverable, their voter registration would be rejected and their ballot would be tossed.
Yeah, I mean, this was like one of the most ingenious voter suppression techniques. I mean, I have to say, you know, we cover a lot of really crappy voting laws, and we cover a lot of intentional efforts to disenfranchise voters. Rarely do we see such genius in merging those two things together. I mean, this was creating this trap for voters who were registering in this way, where, as you say, the State Board of Elections would send out a test piece of mail. I mean, just imagine that, everybody. What the hell are they doing sending out test pieces of mail? I'll tell you what they're doing. They're sending it out to see whether it came back as undeliverable. And if it did, that was the end of the story. I mean, that's it. No other notice, no opportunity to fix it, just like end of the story. And this was, you know, an ingenious scheme that Republicans dreamed up in the legislature to disenfranchise voters, disenfranchise new voters, right? Because these are predominantly going to hit new registrants, and that's obviously going to disproportionately impact new voters. And I'm proud that my law firm, along with a bunch of others, brought lawsuits challenging this. And not only did we win a temporary relief for 2024, which was important, but now it is permanent.
Marc, and some people may be wondering, what's the big deal? If a Board of Elections sends out a piece of mail and it gets returned as undeliverable, doesn't that mean that the address a voter provided was false or not actually a real home address? Like, what's such a problem about sending out a test piece of mail and then it coming back as undeliverable?
Yeah, I mean, the question sort of answers itself. I mean, you know, I'm not here to denigrate the U.S. Postal Service, but let's be honest, like, you would not entrust a valuable thing to this program, right? Like, if someone said to you, I'm going to hold a bunch of your money and you get it if this system we just described works, and otherwise we take it away from you. Well, you know, the most valuable thing we have in civic life is our vote, right? Our vote is our voice. It is the thing that is the most valuable way we are able to participate in democracy. And the idea that this is going to be held hostage to this cockamamie scheme involving test mail is ridiculous. But, you know, Paige, there was actually an op-ed by one of the organizations that my law firm represented, a great group called Down Home North Carolina, and they wrote an op-ed in Democracy Docket. We'll put a link to that above and in the description below. And Paige, they answered your question.
Right. They explained that this law really targets rural and transient voters, people who may not have traditional addresses. But even more so, studies have shown that up to 23% of undeliverable mail is the result of errors by the USPS itself and has nothing to do with the fault of the address or the person who is receiving that mail. And that a 23% error rate for something as valuable, like you said, as a ballot is just not a risk worth taking when the system isn't actually solving a problem or claiming to solve any issue within the election system.
Let's be honest. We are teetering on the edge of dictatorship under Donald Trump. Courts, elections, the rule of law, none of it is safe right now. On May 1st, join me and a panel of experts for a free live conversation about what's really at stake and what we think comes next. Register at the link above or in the description below. Yeah, and one of the points I think we shouldn't overlook in this lawsuit that my law firm filed on behalf of Voto Latino and a group of in-state North Carolina organizations is the role of the Republican Party. Because, the Republican National Committee and the North Carolina Republican Party chose to intervene in this case on the other side. They literally read this lawsuit saying, okay, there's this law that may randomly disenfranchise people because a piece of test mail gets is returned as undeliverable, and these voters are totally screwed. They don't get a chance to cure. They don't get any further notice. They're just literally just disenfranchised. The Republican Party looked at that and said, "Ooh, we like that so much that we are going to spend money to hire lawyers to defend that law. Like, we're literally going to take our limited resources so that that stays in place, right? Like, it's not bad enough that the legislature passed this law. The Republicans in the legislature came up with this bad idea, but the Republican National Committee embraced this as something they liked enough to litigate for. And this is something that Democracy Docket covered in state after state and still covers around the country, is just how active Republicans are in bringing litigation, challenging pro-voting laws, intervening in litigation to defend anti-voting laws. There are times where it feels like it's the only thing the Republican National Committee is consistent about is their efforts to go to court to make voting harder and to discard ballots.
You mentioned that a district court issued a preliminary injunction. The update today is that there is this approved settlement permanently blocking the law. And that's different than when a court says the law is unconstitutional and strikes it down, right? In this case, the state of North Carolina and all the parties agreed that the state will no longer enforce this law. What's so significant about that?
Yeah, it just basically threw in the towel. They had lost before the district court. There was no prospect that they were going to win if this case continued to be litigated. And all that would mount are their costs and their fees, right? The only thing that was going to happen is that they were going to expend a whole lot more money. Both the state of North Carolina would and the Republican National Committee would be defending a law that it was clear was unconstitutional. So while they were willing to put so much in to try to affect the 2024 election, although they didn't because they had lost for the 2024 election, I think they found themselves from their standpoint in a case that was going to continue to grind forward. Their costs would continue to rise. The state of North Carolina actually would eventually potentially be on the hook for the legal fees for the groups that sued. And so they were just looking to cut their losses, and that's what they did. But Paige, before we go and leave the happiness of this case and everything that is good about this case, there is other litigation still pending in North Carolina where the Republicans are basically trying the same thing. And it involves a state judicial election where, once again, we have the Republican Party, jumping into litigation for the sole purpose of throwing out lawful votes, right? In this case, it's people who registered to vote. In the current judicial election case, it is people who cast ballots that were in accordance with state law, that after the fact, after the Republican candidate lost, the Republican National Committee now wants those ballots thrown out.
We're still waiting for a federal court to issue their ruling about whether or not this entire situation can happen at all. But Marc, as we always say, if you want to stay informed on the latest voting rights and democracy news, especially what's happening in North Carolina with the state Supreme Court election, be sure you're subscribed to Democracy Docket's free daily and weekly newsletters.
Yeah, absolutely. So please take this take a moment to just click on the link above or in the description below and become a subscriber to Democracy Docket. And also, do everything you can in your own community to stand up for the right to vote. If you're not in North Carolina, but in your own state, I wrote something in Democracy Docket recently about the need for us to expand the map and to be making sure that there are not laws like the ones we've been describing in this video and in others happening in your community. So please be vigilant in your own community about what Republicans are trying to do to voting rights. Thanks for watching this episode of Democracy Docket. We'll see you next time.